the spiritual aspect on how to connect spiritually with the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu. But what we'll also learn is the physical aspect, how we can physically connect to the Prophet Sallallahu, and how we can adopt the Sunnah and the biographies, how we can adopt the Sunnah into our lives. So inshallah, we'll listen to that. And again, this is just a recap for the participants that are here now. Some participants are also coming in, so I'll have to recap that again. So my apologies. Muraqabah dua in one word, in one sentence. If we can just use the chat function or even the Q&A function. Just while we get more and more people coming in, inshallah. So we have one brother that's mentioned deep connection with the Creator, focus, connect with all, connection with Allah directly. Alhamdulillah, these are really positive answers, and it seems like many people have understood the lecture. So tawakkul on Allah, connection, how to connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all really good answers, by the way. So what else have we got? I learned to make dua with the presence of mind and heart. Alhamdulillah, these are again, these are things which we're not usually taught. We're usually taught on obviously dua is a really powerful thing, and now we can use our faculties of the body, mind, heart, and even soul to connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So without further ado, again, we're back, and this and in previous sessions we've gone through the retreat etiquette and how obviously the world you're leading this is. We've had your brother Tasif go over the Muraqabah dua, and then also do one sort of your test run with that. Now we've got Ustadh Majid Hussain. And again, for those people who was here before, this is just going to be a repeat, but please do bear with me. So Ustadh Majid Hussain, he's a barrister by trade, and he's also one of our Ustadhs. He works over in London at the moment, and he's been there all his life, and he's taken time out to actually to educate us on the biography of the Prophet ﷺ and how we can implement that in our life. So with one aspect, we're going to get a spiritual dimension, and now it's also coupled with the physical dimension. So without further ado, please can I introduce Ustadh Majid Hussain.
Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. As-salatu was-salamu alayka ayyuhan nabi. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu to everyone. We inshallah commence by beginning in the name of Allah Azza wa Jal. We send salams and salutations upon the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and upon all the righteous and the pious, and upon the companions as well, inshallah. As is custom when we are doing anything virtually, it's always good just to make sure that everyone can understand or everyone can hear me and there's no technical glitches, as is often the case. So if I could just ask the 155 plus attendees, mashallah, that are participating online, if you could just use the raise your hand function so that I know you can all hear me, inshallah. And I'm going to wait for everyone to do that. So I'm sure that everyone here is able. So inshallah, we've got just a few more hands left. Perfect, mashallah. Now, just as a matter of course, if I could ask everyone that if you, so inshallah, you can lower your hands now. Everyone can hear me fine. Just as a matter of course for everyone, if you have any questions, then please use the Q&A function. If I ask any questions, then please use the chat function as the appropriate tool, inshallah, to answer my questions. So that's chat function if I ask a question, and I ask you to comment or to answer. If you have a question, then inshallah, please use the Q&A function. And inshallah, the purpose or the time I'm going to take, inshallah, over the next 50 minutes or so is going to be a discourse around the seerah of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Thereafter, I'm going to leave some time for any Q&A, inshallah, and then and we'll take it from there. But before I begin, or as I begin, one of the things that I just want to do is just bring just a sense of objective, a sense of purpose to what we're doing. Now, inshallah, like yourselves, I've also been participating. I've heard some of the eminent stars like Dr. Shah was giving you the overview of what it is, or what this retreat is going to serve, and the purpose of what it's going to serve, inshallah. Now, what will happen over the next couple of days, so inshallah this evening, and we'll go into Saturday and Sunday, is that in connecting you to the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there's going to be these different aspects that you're going to learn. So you're going to have the physical seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You are going to have sessions on the Shama'il. You are going to have sessions about the inward traits of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. All of these will then come together to bring a connection that you have with the blessed Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that's ultimately where you're going to get to. So the question then is that, what am I going to do over the next 50 minutes or so? And the purpose of my session will be to give you an overview, and it is going to be an overview because no one, and especially myself, I can't do justice to the seerah of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But what is a must for you and a must for me, that there are some key things or some key takeaways that we should know about the life of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And why? Because a question, and that's a challenge you should be asking yourself. So all of those who are attending over the next for this particular session, inshallah, over the next few days, is that actually each session that you have will have an objective. And each of you need to make sure that you come away understanding what that objective is and ensuring that for each session you've achieved your objective. Because if you are doing that, then by definition, you will achieve the overall objective of the next couple of days of this retreat, inshallah. So first and foremost, what I want you to just understand as we go into the seerah is that the reason that there has to be a connection, or there should be a base understanding of the life of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is that this is the being, this is the individual, this is a Prophet of Allah who we will rely on in terms of intercession. The one that we claim to love, the one that our iman, our belief is not complete unless we love him more than ourselves, than our parents and everything else in this world. Yeah, that is the being that we're speaking about. So then the question surely is that if that is the level of love that we have to have for the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then surely we must know something. Surely there must be a want to know something about his blessed life sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because that's a key factor in connecting yourself to someone. Now, those of you who've attended retreats before or not, you know, we go through the different stations of love. Why does a being, or why does a person, you know, why should they be loved? What makes them deserve to be loved? And there's particular factors that are discussed, you know, in terms of Jamal, in terms of Kamal, i.e. beauty, specialty, skills, whatever it might be, ones who do favors on you, etc. And the Prophet falls into all of those categories. But I'm not going to go into that now. But what I will be asking of you, and what I do want you to understand, is a particular hadith of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that when he was with the companions, and the companions recite this particular hadith, and the reason they do so, and why this hadith is notable amongst many hadith, is that it's one that the companions of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or the companions of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said that when they heard this particular hadith, it made them so happy, more than hearing any other hadith. And this hadith was very simple. It said, or the Prophet of Allah is reported to have said to his blessed companions that on the day of judgment or in the hereafter, you will be with whom you love. You will be with whom you love. So now let me ask you, and inshallah use the chat function to do this. Why do you think that particular hadith, of all the hadiths that the companions would have heard, why is it that that particular hadith the blessed companions love the most? Now, inshallah, use the chat function if you may, just to answer that, so I can see what your comments are. Because there's many hadiths. There's hadiths that that talk about Jannah, that give glad tidings to the companions. But why that particular hadith? So inshallah, okay. So the answers are coming, inshallah. So use the chat function, and then so we have someone saying because they wanted to be with the Prophet. Yes, someone else says because they thought they would be with the Prophet. Now that's because they loved Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Another person says because they love the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, because yes, absolutely. So yeah, everyone is on along the right lines. Now let's take a step back. The reason, because the thing is this, very simply put, is that when you pray, when you fast, when you do certain acts, there's always a doubt, or there's a question mark or a challenge. How sincere was I in my action? How much did I really do it for Allah, and so forth. But one thing that human beings are clear on, the things that you and I are clear on, we're clear on what we love and what we don't love. We're clear on what we like and what we don't like. And the companions knew that when the Prophet of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said to them that you will be with whom you love, they said, we love that man. And that made them, that elated them. That's why they were so happy, because they knew that salah, maybe, fasting, maybe, but one thing we know is that we love that man, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And hence that hadith was so blessed to them. So what about you and me? So we're here, we want to have that connection. We can have that connection, that love for the Prophet as well. That's why it's very important that the Mashaykhs mention, and from the companions and the Tabi'een and Tabi'een mention, that actually it is also so important to have your connection with the people of Allah, to love the people of Allah, to love the awliya. Why? Because they truly love the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we love them, i.e. they are the representatives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they love the Prophet. And therefore, if we can love them, if we can make them our objective, just like the companions made the Prophet their objective, then we will inshallah be with the Prophet of Allah as well, inshallah, in the hereafter, and inshallah in this particular life. So inshallah, on that note, I'm going to now I will show you some slides, inshallah, and we're going to go through, and it's really important, and I emphasize this point again, is that when you're going through the slides and we go through the seerah, you need to, when I was very young, our local imam used to say that there are certain things that you should know just to class yourself as a Muslim. And he would say that you should know your kalma, you should know how to recite the janazah salah and so forth. Now, for someone who claims to be the ummati of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we claim that we have this love for the Prophet of Allah azza wa jal. Surely when you love something or you love someone, you want to know everything about them. You want to know their history, you want to know their present, you want to know more about them as a person, outwardly and inwardly, so that love can grow, inshallah. And that's effectively the purpose of this, is to give you just a broad understanding, some key facts around the life of the Prophet, so that love, that nurture can resonate, inshallah. And that when you come to, inshallah, do the spiritual experiences, the spiritual connection with the Prophet Allah Azza wa Jal, all of these things, these facts, this understanding of the Prophet will come to help you in that regard. So inshallah, can I just check that everyone's able to see the slides on the screen? Okay, mashallah. So we can, so everyone can see the slides, inshallah. And again, I'm just in, if you can again just use the chat function just to make sure that you can see the slideshow fully. Okay, mashallah. Inshallah. So we begin. So the slides effectively have been called Connecting with the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And we're going to take, now again, we'll come back to the objective. I've kind of gone through that effectively. But so there's some key things that inshallah many of us will know. So they say that of the Prophet Sallallahu, he was born on a Monday. The month of the birth was Rabi al-Awwal, the month of Rabi'a. And in Arabic, this is the month which is referred to effectively this month of spring, when things, and what happens in spring. So so I'm just being asked if I can make the slides full screen. So if people just use the chat function, what is special about the month of, someone said it blossoms. Yes, absolutely. Anything else? Flowers bloom, exactly. So during the blessed month of Rabi'a, the month of the Prophet, spring is the month in which things bloom, i.e. it's effectively the month in which things are rejuvenated, hearts become alive, inshallah. So bear with me, everyone. I'm just going to just shift the slide slightly. Inshallah. Now, when the Prophet ﷺ, was born in this blessed month, there were particular events that took place, and the main events that surrounded the blessed Prophet ﷺ's the blessed birth of the Prophet ﷺ was surrounding the certain events, i.e., so the first and foremost, one of the events that occurred was the idols in the Kaaba that were populated there, they toppled. Another thing that happened was that such light arose in Makkah when Amina radiallahu anha, the blessed mother of the Prophet gave birth to the Prophet, such light arose that such light arose that from Makkah that you could see the palaces of Sham, all the way up to Syria. Another thing that's mentioned is there was the fire in Persia that had been burning for 100 years, that the fire worshippers had kept going, extinguished. And also, one of the key things that occurred during the birth of the Prophet was that Shaitan screamed. And why do we mention these? Because all of these symbolize that something came in that blessed month, i.e. the birth of the Prophet. Now, of the Prophet, I will speak about each of these beautiful individuals that were in his life. But can I just ask for everyone here, I've got next to father 0, I've got next to mother 6, I've got next to grandfather 8. Can anyone hazard a thought as to why those numbers are there, what they mean? Okay, everyone says age, but age of what? Yes, alhamdulillah, mashallah. Absolutely right. They were the age of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That was the age upon which these various people lived or passed away during the life of the Prophet. So, for example, the Prophet's father was Abdullah. He passed away when Amina radiallahu anha was still pregnant with the blessed Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then and there's a particular story that is mentioned of Abdullah, the blessed father of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And again, these blessed stories, these connections to understanding where the Prophet ﷺ came from, what his upbringing was. And one of the key things to notice around his blessed father was that when there were two incidences that occurred. One was that his grandfather, Abdul Muttalib, the Prophet ﷺ, he had a dream, and in a dream it came to him as to where the well of Zamzam would be, and the blessed grandfather, the Prophet ﷺ, uncovered it. But at that time, he had only one son. And it is said that he had made a vow that, inshallah, that if he was given more sons, that he would sacrifice one of his sons. And Allah blessed him with many sons. And some say at least 10. And then he had to fulfill his sacrifice, and to sacrifice one of his sons. And it was said that during that time, the mothers of his children were evidently upset, and they objected to him sacrificing any of his sons. Effectively, they called lots, i.e. one son had to be selected. And of those sons that were selected, it was Abdullah, the father of the Prophet, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so he's also known as the son that cost Abdul Muttalib a number of camels, because and again, I mean, I won't go into the story too much, but broadly speaking, the way to discharge that vow that he had was that he had to repeatedly sacrifice a number of camels up to a certain point, and I think it was about 100 camels, and then that vow was discharged. Now, the mother of the Prophet ﷺ was Amina radiallahu anha. Now, she passed away when the Prophet ﷺ was 6 years of age, at a very young age. And so when she passed away, the person that then took over was the looking after the Prophet ﷺ was his grandfather, Abdul Muttalib. Now, Abdul Muttalib radiallahu anh was the grandfather of the Prophet of Allah Azawajal sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, he took over the looking after of the Prophet sallallahu at the age of 8. Inshallah, sorry, I just think I just had a question. So inshallah, if anyone has any questions, if you could just use the Q&A function. Now, the Prophet ﷺ had a number of aunts and a number of uncles, and I'm just going to mention just a few of them here, inshallah. One of them was the Abu Talib, and he is one of the uncles of the Prophet ﷺ who loved the Prophet ﷺ immensely. And there are stories speaking about the love that he had for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, Abu Talib had 2 sons who were the cousins of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One was Ali radiallahu anhu, and the other one was Jafar radiallahu anhu. Now, both of these blessed children of Abu Talib were Muslims and sacrificed their lives for the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, they say of Abu Talib that he was one of the people that loved the Prophet ﷺ immensely. There was an immense love that he had for the Prophet ﷺ, and he sacrificed his wealth and his status in assisting the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam during his time in Makkah. Now, we don't, in terms of the and there's many stories that are spoken about the love that Abu Talib radiallahu anhu had of the Prophet ﷺ, and we'll speak about that a bit more when we speak about the life of the Prophet ﷺ. Now, another uncle that many of you will have heard of is Abu Lahab. Now, just bear with me. I'm just going to see if I can get comments on the slides. So let me just do that. So I'm just refreshing, just putting the slides into full mode. So hopefully now everyone can have the the slides in full mode. Inshallah, can I just get confirmation on the chat function if the slides are now in full mode, inshallah? Thank you. Jazakallah khair. Yes. Okay, that's fine. Now go, inshallah, now just refocus on this particular point that we were speaking about. The one of the particular uncles of the Prophet was Abu Lahab, and he is a prophet who, not a prophet, is uncle of the Prophet who is mentioned in the Quran, and he became one of the foremost enemies of the Prophet of Prophet Allah Azza wa Jal, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And there is a particular story that they mention of Abu Lahab, that when the Prophet was born, one of his slaves came to Abu Lahab to tell them of the news that he has a nephew, and they got that as she did so, he indicated to her that she was now free from a slave. And that's quite an important point that's mentioned in the seerah, because many years later, one of the other uncles of the Prophet, Abu Abbas radiallahu anh, mentions that he had a dream, or another companion, of which Abu Lahab appeared in that dream. And it was asked of Abu Lahab, what is it of the Prophet? What state do you find yourself in now? And he goes that he finds himself in an appalling state, in the barzakh, that he is being punished on a regular basis. He goes, save one particular day and one particular time that my punishment is, and that's the day that I freed the slave on hearing the good news about the birth of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that, imagine that Allah is giving respite, that Allah is easing a punishment on someone who was an enemy of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because during his lifetime he partook in a small enjoyment on the birth of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is a lesson, inshallah, for the likes of you and I. And the other uncle that we mentioned, that is mentioned here, is Abbas radiallahu anh. He and Hamza radiallahu anh. Both of these were uncles of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Hamza radiallahu anh, as many of you will know, was also known as a lion of Allah Azza wa Jal. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had a particular love for Hamza radiallahu anh. Now Hamza radiallahu anh, and also one of the aunties of the Prophet, Safiya radiallahu anha, were also what you would say foster or milk siblings to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Both the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Hamza radiallahu anh, and Safiya radiallahu anha were all breastfed from the same person, and therefore from a foster mother perspective, they were also siblings as well as aunts and uncles to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And they say, of, as many of you will know, of Hamza radiallahu anh, he was known as the lion of Allah Azza wa Jal. And there's many stories in terms of his becoming Muslim. But also, one of the key things about Hamza radiallahu anh is that he was one of the people that the Prophet actually made supplication for Islam to be strengthened. And both him and Umar radiallahu anh became Muslims on that supplication of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now there's a particular, and I'm going to just come to Safiya radiallahu anha, and I mentioned here that she is the mother of Zubayr ibn al-Awwam radiallahu anh, who is therefore the cousin of the Prophet ﷺ, and was one of the Ashra Mubashra. The Ashra Mubashra means one of the 10 that was promised paradise by the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the son of Zubayr ibn al-Awwam radiallahu anh, is Abdullah ibn Zubayr radiallahu anh. Now each of these, and the reason I mention the particular lineage of Safiya radiallahu anha, Zubayr ibn al-Awwam radiallahu anh, and Abdullah ibn Zubayr radiallahu anh, is that they come in our history again and again. These are foremost companions of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And one of the key things, and there's a story they say of Safiya radiallahu anha, that she was a very she was a very fierce woman. She, mashallah, raised Zubayr ibn Awwam with strength, with vigor. It is said that from a very young age, he was sent out into the woods to learn to fight, to learn to hunt. And they say that when, in the older days, when Zubayr ibn Awwam used to be in Medina, the children of Medina used to climb on top of him to count all the scars that he had on his blessed body. So these are some of the stories that surround Zubayr ibn Awwam radiallahu anh. Now Zubayr ibn Awwam radiallahu anh is also, he was married to the blessed daughter of Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, Asma bin Abi Bakr. And they say that when the Muslims first arrived in Medina, there was a while before the Muslims actually had any newborns born to them. And as such, it was being said that the Muslims, or effectively the people of Medina that used to live there, the non-believers, the Jews of Medina, they would say that the Muslims are cursed. Effectively, they will never have any children. So the first person, or the first child to be born following the migration, was Abdullah ibn Zubayr, the son of Zubayr ibn Awwam radiallahu anh, and the son of Asma bint Abi Bakr radiallahu anha. So that was the first child to be born. And they go that when he was born, they took him and they walked through the streets of Medina, reciting Allahu Akbar. And that was when the Prophet, and they gave him to the Prophet, and then he performed Tareeqah, when you take some date and you place it into the child's mouth. Now, again, if you think about these individuals and they kind of their stories and the impact the Prophet had on these, you begin to understand more about the individual the Prophet was and what he inspired in the people around him. And they say that when Abdullah ibn Zubayr was a very young child, he used to walk the streets of Medina. And in those days, when Umar radiallahu anh used to be in Medina, he had a reputation that when Umar radiallahu anh used to walk the streets of Medina, all the children used to run. They used to clear the path because of his reputation. In fact, Umar radiallahu anh was the one that that parents, when the kids wouldn't listen to them, they said, if you don't listen to me, we'll call Umar. So he had that reputation. And they go, once Umar radiallahu anh was walking with his companions, and as he was walking, there was a group of children in front of him, and all of them, as they saw Umar radiallahu anh, they all scattered, they all ran away, apart from one child. And he stood on the road, and Umar radiallahu anh, as he approached him, he goes to this particular child, he goes, why aren't you running away like the rest of your friends? Why are you still here? And he goes, oh Umar, the road is big enough for you and it's big enough for me. And they go, that particular child was none other than Abdullah ibn Zubayr radiallahu anh. And there's many stories that are mentioned of him and his virtues, and also how he looked to save the Kaaba when it was being attacked by Hijab bin Yusuf. So inshallah, just moving on slightly. And then we come to the, now this particular thing is around the youth and the marriage of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And there's a number of things that are mentioned here, and those of you who have been on retreats before, and you would have heard the Mashaikhs mention the first thing that's mentioned here, which is the Hifdul Fudul. Now this was a pact of righteousness, a pact of ethics, and it is a key marker or a keystone or incident that occurred in the life of the Prophet before prophecy. And what this regarded was that during the times of Makkah, obviously there wasn't the natural law and order that we have, like police and so forth. So it was the strongest had justice, i.e., might was right, as they say. And they say and they say that a particular occasion happened that some traders came to Mecca, and as they did so, they did a trade with one of the tribesmen. And one of the tribe leaders of Mecca refused to give payment to this particular trader. So he had come from far, he had come to Makkah, he had sold his goods, he had come to a deal with this particular leader of Makkah, and he then refused, this individual refused to then give payment. And they said of him that so this particular trader, he then rushed off to or went to the Kaaba, to the main square, and there he yelled, he said, "Who will do justice for me? Is there anyone that will do justice for me?" And they got, at that point, the Prophet ﷺ, and now he was in his youth, in his prime, he was not married at this stage, and he gathered the other youth of Medina, the other young people, and from all the different tribes, and from that they said, like, look, if someone in Makkah is being unjustly done by, that all of us together, we say that we commit to this particular pact, to this particular agreement, that we will fight for their rights. Whoever the oppressor might be, however large his tribe might be, however strong his army may be, that we will gather together and then we will fight for the rights of the minorities. Now, this is an amazing thing, because if you understand from the seerah, is that the character of the Prophet ﷺ, the manifestation arose, i.e. the people used to witness this before prophecy, and this is the level of degree, the level of concern he had for injustice, that even at such a young age he managed to bring all these people from the different tribes together to form this pact, and it was called the Hifl Fudul, and it's a key moment both in our history and the history and the seerah of Prophet ﷺ. And it's based on this that, and if you notice the next bullet talks about his reputation, because the thing about the Prophet ﷺ, and the Mashaykhs mentioned to us, is that why was it that the Prophet ﷺ, why is it that prophecy took so long? Why? So the Prophet ﷺ, according to the statement of the Blessed Prophet ﷺ, was that he was a prophet when Adam alayhi salam was still between earth and clay, for example. So he was a prophet from day one. However, revelation did not come to the Prophet ﷺ until the age of 40. And they go, and the reason for that was, one of the hikmats behind that is that his people got to live with him for 40 years. So they could testify to his character, that this is an individual that does not lie. Not only does he not lie, this is an individual that when he said something will happen, it happens. So these comments that Al-Sadiq, Al-Amin, you're the truthful, these don't just come about. This is because of the likes of the Hilf of Fudul. These actions the Prophet took part in his young age, that people witnessed themselves that this is a person of such high moral character, of such high standard, of such concern for other people. And that's one of the hikmats the Mashaykhs mention of why revelation did not come up until the Prophet had attained the age of 40. And on that note, one of the key people that features in the life of the Prophet is, of course, his blessed wife, Sayyidina Khadija radiallahu anha. Now, they say of Sayyidina Khadija radiallahu anha, so, and again, inshallah, I'll use the chat function just to make sure everyone is still awake. How old was the Prophet when he married the blessed Khadija radiallahu anha? MashaAllah. Yeah, absolutely. And how old was the blessed Khadija radiallahu anha at when she married the Prophet? Yes, alhamdulillah, mashallah. Everyone is awake and listening, which is good, mashallah. So yes, the Prophet was at the age of, he was 25 when he sallallahu alaihi wasallam married Khadija radiallahu anha. She was the age of 40, and obviously the story of their marriage is told many times, but there are some key things that you should understand. One of the things to note is that Khadija radiallahu anha was one of the notables of Mecca. They go that she was someone that was of high character, high morality. She was one of the aristocracy of Mecca. She had an amazing dignity about her, an amazing beauty about her. She was revered by everyone. She had an incredible reputation in Mecca. And also when the Prophet eventually started giving dawah and started calling to people to Islam, they go, a lot of the oppression that took place, a lot of it was alleviated. It wasn't, it was stopped or didn't go beyond a certain limit because of the stature and the influence that Khadija radiallahu anha had over the people of Makkah during that time. Now, inshallah, during the time that he was married to Khadija radiallahu anha, they had 6 children in total. Inshallah, I'll just come to that now. So they had 2 sons, Qasim radiallahu an, Abdullah radiallahu an. Both of them died in young age, in infancy, and they had 4 blessed daughters: Zainab radiallahu anha, Kulthum radiallahu anha, Ruqayya radiallahu anha, and Fatima Tazara radiallahu anha. And each of the daughters, stories can be written about their blessed virtues and their stories. But one thing I would just mention of, obviously, Fatima Tazara radiallahu anha is that she is one of the 4 women she's amongst the 4 women that have been promised the highest station of paradise. And those 4 women is obviously Fatima Zahra radiallahu anha, her blessed mother Khadija radiallahu anha, and Miriam alayhi salam, and the wife of Pharaoh Asiya alayhi salam. So all of those 4 are granted the highest station of Jannah. And of those 4, Fatima Zahra has the highest of all of them. And they say of Fatima Zahra that she was a person of such haya, of such shyness, that they go that even when she used to travel to the when she used to, for example, walk the streets of Medina, they go that she used to ensure that her jubba was such that it would trail at the back, and she would thicken the back of the jubba so that as she would walk, her jubba would wipe away her footprints, so people couldn't see her footprints. They say of her hiyah, it was such that when she would pray, she would begin to blush. That's because she was so conscious that Allah is with her, that Allah is watching her, that she would be blushing in His presence. That was how much alive her heart was. It's mentioned that once some companions were walking past, some blessed female Sahaba, and they saw Fatima Zahra in Medina once. She was sitting in the corner and she looked perplexed, someone that looked quite worried. And one of these blessed companions asked Fatima Zahra anha that, why do you look so concerned? And she mentioned that she goes to them, that she goes, I worry that when I die and they take my body, when I die and they take my body for the janazah, that people will see the outline of my body. And they go that because in that time, the tradition was that when someone passed away, so you had something flat, the body was placed on top of it, and then a cloth was placed on top of that, and they would carry the body to the janazah. And that was her concern, that she goes that, when they place a cloth over my body, someone could see the outline of my body. And then this particular companion, look how Allah Azza wa Jal brings things about. This particular companion that she confided in was also one of the companions that the Prophet had initially sent for the first migration to Abyssinia, i.e. to Ethiopia. And she said to Fatima Zahra, on hearing this, she goes, when I was in Ethiopia, when we were there for the first migration, we noticed that when they bury their dead, what they do is when they place them on the slab, they have 4 particular points, and then they cover the body, so you can't see the shape of the body. And they go that on hearing this news, they go, Fatima Zahra was actually, her entire mood changed. She became so happy. She made it. She put it in her wasila, in her amongst her death wishes, that's how she wants to be buried, and that she wanted her burial to happen around the time of Maghrib, so when the sun was setting. So even more concern about her haya and her virtues. And it said that when she crossed from this life to the barzakh, that the angels actually made an announcement, and that when she was passing into the barzakh, it was said that, angels, so the angel is making an announcement, angels, lower your gaze, for Fatima Zahra is crossing. That's the stature of her of her haya. And inshallah, we might speak, inshallah, of her more so shortly, inshallah. And inshallah, now I'm just going to, there's just a couple of particular points that I've got here that I inshallah want to bring out. Now, obviously, we mentioned about why the first revelation happened at the age of 40. But one of the other things that, is kind of key to speak about, I think, is just some of the initial responses the Prophet had when he called people to Islam. And they go, Ali radiallahu anh was one of the youngest companions, i.e. effectively he was the first of the youth that accepted Islam. They say Hamza radiallahu anh is very interesting. When he accepted Islam, it wasn't as a result necessarily of the dawah as such. It was the Prophet had started now openly giving dawah, and he was being persecuted in Mecca, phenomenally so. And as he was being persecuted, he was once by the Kaaba, and as he was there, as he was sitting in the Kaaba in reflection, Abu Jahl, one of the foremost oppressors of Prophet walked past. And as he walked past, Abu Jahl began to engage in debate, engage in argument. He was really vulgar to the Prophet. He said some terrible things, and he was with all his group of friends or whoever they were at that time. And the Prophet left. And someone witnessed all of this incident. And as the Prophet left, Hamza radiallahu anh had just come back from hunting. And as the custom was then that when they would come back from hunting, they would go straight to the Kaaba first. And as he was going, a woman who witnessed all of this, she turned around and said to Hamza radiallahu anh, how is it that you walk around so freely when your nephew has been accused, has done such vulgarity to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? And on hearing this, Hamza radiallahu anh, in anger, went straight, after hearing this, he went straight to Abu Jahl, and they go that he took whatever he had in his hand and he smashed it up across the head of Abu Jahl. And they go, Abu Jahl was with around 10 of his friends. And Abu Jahl isn't he's not a weakling. This was a guy that was, he was an oppressor Prophet, but it was someone that had strength. And they go that, and when Hamza radiallahu anh hit him, he goes to him. His comments were, he goes, I heard, what's your problem with my nephew? What I've now become him. I've now taken his religion. What are you going to say to me? And they go, that Abu Jahl got up, as did all of his friends. And he stopped, and he goes, and he actually apologized to Hamza radiallahu anh. He actually said, look, yeah, maybe I did go a bit too far. But that also goes to show the strength of Hamza radiallahu anh as well, that Abu Jahl at that point backed off. And they go, that's how Hamza radiallahu anh initially became Muslim. It was just simply because of his loyalty to the Prophet ﷺ and his actual Islam in terms of, taking things on and following some of the other things. That all came later, which is a really interesting point in terms of how the way the Prophet engaged and did dawah with Hamza radiallahu anh. Abu Talib he comes up. He was one of the foremost supporters of Prophet ﷺ. It is no one, they say, of the scholars say that no one should question the iman of Abu Talib radiallahu anh. He had a deep love for the Prophet ﷺ, and he's someone that Prophet ﷺ will speak highly of throughout his life. Abu Jahl is who I spoke about before. He was one of the foremost oppressors or enemies of Prophet ﷺ. They say in the Battle of Badr, when he was being when the Quraysh lost the Battle of Badr, they get that when Abu Jahl was on the battlefield, and one of the companions was standing on top of him, and it was one of the ones that Abu Jahl used to oppress. And he looked upon him and he said, who's won this particular war? And the companion said, and the Prophet ﷺ has won it with the help of Allah. And as he was going to chop off the head of Abu Jahl in fact said to him that he goes, don't cut my head from my neck, cut it from my chest, so that when you take me to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he can see how big my head is, how big I am. And so this companion did as Abu Jahl said, and when he brought before to the Prophet ﷺ, and he relayed the story, the Prophet ﷺ said that every nation has a pharaoh, and the pharaoh of our nation is Abu Jahl. So again, someone that he was a very much a key oppressor in in terms of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Abu Lahab was one of the uncles of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Someone just asked me a question actually: is Abu Jahl and Abu Lahab the same person? No, they're not the same people. And there's something that comes up again and again. Abu Lahab was actually one of the uncles of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but he was also an enemy of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Abu Jahl wasn't an uncle, and he was just one of the key oppressors as well, one of the key enemies of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then we have the story of Bilal radiallahu anhu. We're actually going to have a session on the life of Bilal radiallahu anhu, actually in the early hours tomorrow morning. I think about 3:30, one of the sessions. So we can pick up that then, inshallah. Now, one of the other key events that took place within the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ that is, that we should be familiar with was was when the Muslims were boycotted in Makkah. Now, what this effectively meant was that the Islam was beginning to spread in Makkah. They tried oppressing the Prophet ﷺ, they tried oppressing the Muslims, but the issue that they were having was that Islam was still continuing to spread. People were still becoming Muslims. So what all the other tribes did in Quraysh, they all got together and they said that they were going to boycott the tribe of the Prophet, Bani Hashim. And not all of Bani Hashim were necessarily Muslim, but to punish the Prophet ﷺ, they said that they were going to boycott all of the tribe of the Prophet ﷺ. And the boycott consisted of 3 key things. One, that no one would be able to trade with that tribe. That no one was allowed to marry anyone of that tribe, and no food could be exchanged with that tribe. And the boycott was such, and this is and the boycott was such that they say, and there's a particular companion that narrates this story. Now, first and foremost, and this also demonstrates the enmity that Abu Lahab had towards his nephew, that when the boycott started, all the people of Bani Hashim, they all got together and they all started living a lot closer to each other for protection. Apart from Abu Lahab, he left his tribe and started living with some of the enemy tribes during the time. Now, there you go. The boycott went on for 3 years, and one of the companions of Allah relates that they related afterwards that one of their hardest times was during the boycott. And they go that once they were walking in the dark, and they go they were so hungry, because no food was being exchanged with them, that people weren't trading with them, that he goes that once he was walking to the streets of Medina, and he felt himself his foot felt something on the ground, and he just picked it up and he just ate it. He didn't care what it was or how it was. That's the depth of hunger that they had. That's how severe the boycott was for the Muslims. And then it eventually ended in 3 years. And eventually, inshallah, there are certain incidents that occurred, inshallah, but I'm just mindful and conscious of time. However, one of the things that came about from the boycott, because right after the boycott, we have in the seerah what's called the Year of Sorrow. And the reason it's called the Year of Sorrow is because that is the year in which both Abu Talib and Khadija radiallahu anha passed away. And they got that Khadija radiallahu anha passed away because actually the boycott had such a severe impact on her health that shortly after that it left her health very poor, and she passed away. And the reason it's called the Year of Sorrow is that the Prophet firstly lost his most closest friend and closest companion, which was Khadija radiallahu anha. She was one of the closest supporters of the Prophet, and also then he lost his uncle, who was the head of the tribe of Banu Hashim. And then the oppression for the Muslims increased so much that is when the Prophet did his migration to Taif, i.e. he went to Taif to do dawah for one entire month. They go that he left, one, to ease the hardship for the Muslims, because he thought if he's not in Makkah, they would oppress them less, and also to do dawah there. And they go when he went to Taif, because and many people may know the story, but particularly he went and did dawah for one entire month. For one whole month, he went from house to house, from tent to tent, calling to the people of Islam. And how many accepted? Maybe I'll ask them on the chat function. How many people accepted? Absolutely. Complete zero. Not a single person. Now imagine that. Imagine leaving your home and doing dawah, doing tabligh for one entire month. You know, and not a single person accepted Islam. And not only that, as the Prophet was leaving, they were completely completely terrible in how the Prophet was dealt with by the people of Taif. And I won't go into that story before, and it's one that perhaps I can mention another time. But also what led to from that story of Taif was that that's when the Isra and Miraj happened. That effectively has a gift after all of that. Allah Azza wa Jal took the Prophet on the night journey and then onto the night ascension to the heavens, which inshallah the Isra and Miraj, and one of the things that you will inshallah be experiencing is the spiritual Miraj. So inshallah, I'm just slightly conscious about time. So let me go to the Battle of Badr, Uhud, and the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. There's a particular piece that I just want to mention on these three incidences that happened in the life of the Prophet. The Battle of Badr itself was something that comes up again in the Seerah because of its miraculousness. There were 313 Muslims against 1,000 of the enemy, effectively 3-1 in combat, and Allah gave the Muslims a decisive victory, because on that day they go that when the Prophet stood at the mount in Badr, then he supplicated that night, he actually said to Allah that because the non-Muslims, the people of Quraysh, had come that day not just to fight the Muslims, they had come to completely annihilate them. That was it. This was their last stand, effectively. It was to completely eradicate Islam from the face of the earth on that particular night, on the 17th of Badr. And the notes mentioned the fear of the time, which I was speaking, was about the story of Abu Jahl. Now, one other thing I would just also mention is I've got here the Battle of Uhud, and this is when and Khalid bin Walid is one of the key, the Sayful Islam, i.e. the sword of Islam, he's referred to. And Khalid bin Walid became Muslim much later on in the life of the Prophet. So, and it was actually after the Battle of Uhud. He was one of the key members. He was non-Muslim then, and he was one of the key reasons the Muslims lost that particular battle. He did the strategic retreat, effectively. He pretended to retreat his army, and the Muslims came down from the hill, i.e. the archers, and then Khalid bin Walid went back around and won that particular battle. But they go that he was so impressed, having fought so many battles with Prophet ﷺ, that his iman was just growing at that time. And that after the battle, he went and he took himself to Medina and asked to become a Muslim. And look at the wisdom of the Prophet ﷺ, that the same sword of Khalid bin Walid that slaughtered or so many Muslims become shahadat on that, i.e. that same sword, the Prophet ﷺ said, now you can use that in a good way. And that's one of the things that the people or the friends of Allah, the awliya, the mashaykhs do, is that they take wherever anyone else is, wherever you are in your life, whatever skill you have, you know, whether you were doing bad with it before, that when you are looking to embark on a journey of closeness to Allah, they just simply redirect you or redirect your skills or redirect your focus in a good way, in a way towards Allah. And that's what the Prophet used to do with all the companions, that when they would come to Islam, he wouldn't chastise them for what happened before or how bad they were or anything like that. He just took whatever the goodness was, and he just took their skills and he just redirected them in a way that was pleasing to Allah. And one of the things, and the final thing I've got here is the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. And this is a really interesting piece, and one that the Mashaykhs highlight for us in the Seerah, because it's one where sometimes, you know, people have an impatient nature. Sometimes we want results immediately, what is there before us. And the Treaty of Hudaybiyah was one of those where when the Muslims came to do Hajj, to do the pilgrimage, the Makkans wouldn't allow them to come into the city. And then and all the companions had come, and they were now in a position of strength. You know, they've been in Medina for a number of years. They've come in peace, but they wanted to do the pilgrimage, and the Meccans denied them and said that they did the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. They came to a peace treaty, but they denied them to be able to do the pilgrimage that year, and they had to do it the following year. And the famous story it mentions about how Umar radiallahu anhu was, he was completely, not just him, some of the other companions were completely overwhelmed. They were, just because they were so excited to go into Makkah. And then when the Prophet said that actually no, he signed the treaty, they say that the Umar radiallahu anhu, they go that he went to the Prophet and said to the Prophet, "Oh Prophet, are you not the Prophet of Allah?" And to which he said, "I am." And he goes, "Oh Prophet, are you not are you not on the right path?" And Prophet goes, "I am." He goes, "Are they not on the wrong path?" Prophet goes, "They are." And then Umar goes, "And why are we doing this?" And the Prophet, they go that, in his blessed way, said to him that this is, I'm taking this course, i.e. the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, the way of peace. And then they go, Umar, they went to Abu Bakr, and said exactly the same thing. Is he not the Prophet of Allah? Is this not, are we not on the right? And the Prophet, Abu Bakr goes there, he answered in the way of the Prophet every way. And then he said one other thing. He goes, look, if you believe him to be the Prophet of Allah, then just follow. No need for us to ask questions. And they got then, Umar then came into his consciousness and directed and followed, and that's when the revelation came that Allah Azza wa Jal said to the Muslim that you have had a decisive victory by the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. And then you see the manifestation of that within 1 year, because in the 1 year that they had peace, the people in Medina, the amount of Meccans and that migrated peacefully to Medina to become Muslims just increased massively. And then we come to the we then come to the conquest of Makkah, and when the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came, and there's I won't go into all the things, so I'm just slightly conscious of the time. But one of the key things that is a takeaway, when the Prophet came into Makkah, it was a day that he came as a conquering hero. He had an army. The people of Makkah could not withhold him. Yet in spite of all of that, the Prophet came in with such mercy and with such forgiveness. They go that when he was coming on his horse into Makkah, that they go, he had his face so lowered in such humility that his beard was touching the back of the horse. That's the level of humility in which he entered Makkah, inshallah. And then, inshallah, on the final part I will mention, inshallah, before I pass over to Ustadh Ajaz, is one of the key things that occurred after the conquest of Makkah, which was the Battle of Hunayn. And they go that one of the key things, this is one thing that just again reflects or shows you an insight of the Prophet Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is that when the Battle of Hunayn happened, when the rewards of the war were being shared, the Prophet, a lot of it was being shared with the Meccans, and it was said that some of the Ansar were upset that the Prophet, i.e. the people of Medina, they were worried that the Prophet will now go back to his people of Makkah. Now, word got back to the Prophet ﷺ that this is what the Ansar and people of Medina are coming, and the Prophet ﷺ called them all into his tent, all the people of Medina, as well as Umar and Abu Bakr, and both of them were present. And the Prophet ﷺ said to the people of Medina that this is what I've heard, is this true? And they say quiet. And the Prophet ﷺ said that you can say to me, you have the right to say to me that you fed me when my own people rejected me. You accepted me when Mecca threw me out. And the people of Medina were listening. And Prophet goes, all of this you could say to me. And he goes, but Prophet said to them, know this, that if the world was to go left and the people of Medina were to go right, I would follow you. That if I was given everything to go away from the people of Medina, I would still follow you. And they go that his speech was such that the tent was full of weeping, i.e. the people of Medina, the Ansar, were, they were crying so much that their entire beards were wet. That's the love that the Prophet ﷺ had shown for the people of Medina, inshallah. Now, inshallah, I'm going to conclude, inshallah, because we have the next session, inshallah, with Ustadh Ajaz. He will take the next session, inshallah. I will we have the next we have a couple more sessions, so inshallah I won't be able to do Q&A at this point because I'm just slightly conscious of time, but we can pick up any questions in the later sessions, inshallah. So I'll just pass over, inshallah, to Brother Umair.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope that hope that you're all well. And Alhamdulillah, just you listened to a really thought-provoking lecture by Ustadh Majid that summarized the actual seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, so the biography, and gave nice and prominent examples from the birth of the Prophet ﷺ, then key aspects which one, and if one sort of remembers, and also takes on board, it can build that love for, it can build that sort of love and connection with the Prophet ﷺ. So now, what we'll do, because it has been around about an hour, we'll take a short break for 10 minutes. So that's 10 minutes, and inshallah, we'll be back over in 10 minutes. So if we say 9:15, that if we're going to be back here, so we're going to start around about 9:15. So if you want to be back for around about 10 past or even 30 minutes past, so we can promptly start with Ustadh Ejaz Ahmed's talk, inshallah. So again, you've got about 10 minutes, so please be back on time. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I hope you had a nice and refreshing break, and you got up and you done some and you done some of your stretches, inshallah. So now we will actually go into the theory of the Lataif. So this is actually a crux of it. So if a person can get their head around this, then inshallah the rest it will be easier. We are going to just wait a few minutes so everyone can sort of come back, inshallah. But yeah, can I ask a quick question first before we do start? We've got like a minute or two just to let everyone on the biography of the Prophet ﷺ.